You ever notice how every time Diddy's name shows up in the headlines lately, it's never for music? It's almost surreal. One of the biggest moguls in hip-hop history, now facing a reality no one ever thought possible, life behind bars. But what really made people pause wasn't just the sentence. It was what came next. Diddy didn't just accept his fate, he requested where he wanted to serve it. A place called Fort Dix, a federal correctional institution tucked away in New Jersey. At first it sounded strange. Why would someone like Diddy care which prison he went to? But as you'll see, the choice says more than any statement he's made in months. Because when you peel back the layers, Diddy's Fort Dix request reveals something deeper about fear, strategy, and the illusion of control. This isn't just a celebrity going to prison. This is a man trying to manage his downfall, the same way he managed his empire.
I'm in your mama crib waiting, duct taping, your fam, destiny lays in my hands, gat lays in my...
For decades, Diddy, Sean Combs, was seen as untouchable, a visionary, a mogul, a self-made billionaire who built an empire from the ground up. He shaped music, culture, and fashion. From Bad Boy Records to Ciroc Vodka to Revolt TV, everything he touched turned into a statement of power. But over time, the story started to change. Whispers of lawsuits, investigations, and shocking accusations started surfacing, each one painting a darker image of the man who once sold the dream of success. And when the day of the verdict came, the silence in that courtroom was chilling. The world watched as one of hip-hop's most powerful men stood still. No entourage, no music, no glamour, just the weight of decades catching up. When the sentence was read, people expected chaos or emotion. But what came next was something even more unexpected. Calm calculation. Within hours, reports surfaced that Diddy had requested to serve his time at Fort Dix Federal Correctional Institution, and that single request sent the internet into overdrive.
Normally, when someone is sentenced in a federal case, they don't get to choose their prison. The Bureau of Prisons decides that based on factors like security level, safety concerns, and behavior. But Diddy's team made an official recommendation for Fort Dix, a move that immediately made people question his motives. Now, technically, there's nothing illegal about that. Many defense lawyers make recommendations for where their clients should go. But for a man with Diddy's level of fame, the optics were different. Because Fort Dix isn't your typical image of a federal prison. It's a low-security facility, meaning it doesn't have the same intense lockdowns, razor wire, or violent environments you'd find elsewhere. Instead, it's more structured, organized, and even described by some as manageable. There's no freedom, of course, but compared to higher security institutions, Fort Dix looks like a completely different world. So the question everyone started asking was simple. Why there? Was it safety, comfort, or something far more strategic? Fort Dix sits in Burlington County, New Jersey on a massive 1,200-acre site once used by the U.S. Army. It's one of the largest federal correctional institutions in the United States, housing over 4,000 inmates. It's technically low security, but that doesn't mean easy. Inmates live in open dormitories rather than cells, sleeping in bunks with 60 to 100 men per unit. Days start early, around 6 a.m., with head counts, work assignments, and structured programs. There's a sense of routine and order, something that can actually appeal to high-profile inmates who crave control in uncertain environments. There's also the RDAP program, highly regarded drug treatment and rehabilitation course that can shorten a sentence by up to a year. Beyond that, there are educational programs, fitness areas, religious groups, and even vocational training. To outsiders, it might sound like comfort, but for inmates, it's still prison life, restrictions, surveillance, and the constant reminder that freedom is gone. However, compared to high-security prisons like USP Atlanta or ADX Florence, Fort Dix is considered safer. There are fewer violent incidents, less gang control, and more structure. That's probably why Diddy's lawyers picked it. It offers stability and less chaos, especially for someone used to being in control. For Diddy, image has always been everything. He's not just an artist or entrepreneur, he's a brand. Every moment of his career, from the way he dressed to the way he threw parties, was part of a bigger narrative: power, influence, and success. So when his empire started to crumble, it wasn't just about losing money or reputation, it was about losing control. Choosing Fort Dix was, in many ways, his attempt to reclaim some of that control. Think about it. Even in the face of a prison sentence, he wanted a say in how it unfolded, a say in where he'd sleep, who he'd be surrounded by, and what kind of environment he'd be in. Because for someone like Diddy, control isn't just a habit, it's an identity. He's used to being the man who calls the shots. So this wasn't just a legal move, it was psychological. In a world where everything was slipping away, Fort Dix became his way of saying, "I'm still managing this story." Diddy wouldn't be the first high-profile figure to end up at Fort Dix.
Over the years, the prison has quietly hosted a range of well-known inmates, business executives, politicians, and entertainers. Most of them were convicted of non-violent offenses like fraud or tax evasion. For example, insiders say that Bernie Madoff's associates and several famous white-collar offenders served time there. Even some lower-level celebrities and public figures reportedly preferred Fort Dix because of its relatively stable environment. That history gives the prison an odd reputation. It's tough, but not brutal. And in a strange way, it makes it a status choice among high-profile defendants. It's still punishment, but in the hierarchy of prison life, it's as close to controlled chaos as one can get. So, Diddy's choice fits the pattern of a man trying to maintain an image, even in disgrace. Fort Dix isn't just a facility, it's a narrative tool. It's the difference between being seen as locked up and being seen as handling business.
Let's break down how this request actually works. When someone is sentenced in federal court, their defense attorney can submit a recommendation for where the sentence should be served. The judge can support that recommendation, but it's ultimately up to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, BOP. The BOP uses a complex formula based on the type of crime, sentence length, history, and risk level. They also consider factors like medical needs, family location, and safety threats. So even though Diddy's team asked for Fort Dix, it's not guaranteed. The Bureau might deny it, or they might decide another location fits better. But here's the twist. The public nature of the request might influence the outcome indirectly. When someone like Diddy makes headlines about where they want to serve, it can pressure the system to at least consider it more carefully. And that, again, plays into his old game, media leverage. Even facing prison, Diddy's still thinking like a PR mogul, shaping the conversation before anyone else does. The internet was divided when the Fort Dix request became public. Some fans said it was smart. Why not choose a safer, more structured place if you can? Others saw it as the ultimate example of privilege. Regular people don't get to choose their prisons, one viral post read. And it's true. Most inmates have zero say in where they go, and many end up in facilities hundreds of miles from family or legal help. For critics, this was just another chapter in the celebrity justice story, a pattern where fame and money seem to soften consequences. But supporters argue that Diddy's team was simply doing what any competent lawyer would do, protecting their client's safety. Still, the optics matter, because when you've spent your whole career presenting yourself as untouchable, even a simple prison request starts to look like manipulation. And that's where Diddy's real challenge begins. He's not just fighting a legal battle anymore, he's fighting for the story that history will tell about him. What's happening now feels less like a breakdown and more like a rebranding. Throughout his career, Diddy has always managed to turn setbacks into reinventions. When Biggie died, he reinvented himself as a solo artist. When Bad Boy fell off, he became a business mogul. When scandals hit, he doubled down on his image as the unstoppable hustler. So this, his prison chapter, might just be another reinvention in disguise. By requesting Fort Dix, he's quietly choosing the stage for his next act, a place where he can survive, reflect, and possibly control how this story unfolds. It's not about luxury, it's about strategy. He knows that if he can complete programs, show good behavior, and stay out of trouble, he can shape the narrative of redemption later, maybe even walk out sooner than expected. And when that day comes, you can bet there'll be a documentary, an interview, or a tell-all story waiting, because Diddy has never been one to let someone else write his legacy. If you look deeper, Fort Dix symbolizes more than just a prison. It represents a fall from grace that's still trying to maintain dignity. It's not the rough street justice many expected. It's the middle ground between punishment and control. The facility's history with high-profile inmates, its programs, and its reputation all reflect the kind of environment Diddy would see as manageable. And in a strange, almost poetic way, it mirrors the image he's always sold: structured, disciplined, and always one step ahead. But here's the irony. Inside Fort Dix, Diddy won't be a mogul or a star. He'll just be another inmate, following rules, waiting in lines, and living under someone else's schedule. That contrast, the man who once ruled industries now confined to a bunk bed, is what fascinates people. Because no matter how much power you once had, prison has a way of stripping it away. This moment could define how the world remembers Diddy, not just as a music icon or businessman, but as a cautionary tale of ambition, power, and control gone too far. Whether people see this as justice or injustice, one thing is certain: it marks the end of an era.
Diddy's Fort Dix request may have been strategic, but it also exposes his vulnerability. For the first time in decades, he's not calling the shots, and that reality might be the hardest punishment of all. Still, if history has shown us anything, it's that Diddy never stays silent for long. He's already planning what comes next, because in his mind, even a downfall can be turned into a story of survival. The question is, will the world believe it this time?
Right on. Sonny.
So, what do you think? Was Diddy's Fort Dix request smart or manipulative? Is it self-preservation or another example of power bending the rules? Whatever side you're on, one thing's undeniable. When a man who once had everything chooses where he'll lose it all, it says a lot about who he really is. Because even behind bars, Diddy's still playing chess while everyone else is watching checkers. And if there's one thing he's proven over and over again, it's that he always finds a way to stay in the story.